So, graded exercise therapy, is it really as bad as they say? In 2021, the National Institute for Healthcare Excellence issued guidance for GPs in England and Wales that graded exercise therapy should no longer be recommended for people with chronic fatigue syndrome. But is it really that bad? Campaigners for this ban had warned that graded exercise had proved to be dangerous for most patients and had led to a worsening of symptoms rather than improvement. But there is still controversy over this. Researchers at the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience at King's College London have described this 2021 guidance as problematic, saying, "It is difficult to understand the disconnect between the initial 2007 guidance that recommended GET, for which the research evidence has strengthened over the following decade, and the recent guideline which removes GET, replacing it with so-called energy management, for which there is little evidence." So the argument continues. I want to put forward my own views on the matter, as it's something I feel quite strongly about. Now, I am not a medical professional and nor am I a scientist, so I cannot claim to be an expert with all the details of the various research studies to hand. But I have undertaken graded exercise therapy myself, and I have read a lot about the neuro and psychological reasons for chronic conditions. And I have my own theory on why graded exercise does work and why it often doesn't. So recently, I have been following therapy techniques for dealing with chronic pain, which I have found extremely powerful and effective. And this includes the Curable app and an app I've recently discovered called Mave, which both use the scientifically proven theory that chronic pain, and I believe that also includes any chronic condition such as fatigue, is basically caused by the brain's reaction to fear. Our brains create pain to warn us of danger. That is pain's basic function. If we put our hand near a flame, the pain that we experience is the brain's way of telling us to take our hand away to protect us from damage. With chronic pain, the brain has gone into a kind of overdrive. Put very simply, this is what happens. The pain or the fatigue has often begun with some kind of physical injury or illness. When the pain is not relieved over a certain amount of time, we begin to get fearful. Perhaps there's something more serious going on. Perhaps we'll be unable to work and get into financial difficulties. How will we cope in social situations? And so on and so on. Now that fear alerts the brain that there is danger. And because the brain perceives danger, it creates more pain and more fatigue. And the fear actually becomes a habit, ending up in a vicious cycle that perpetuates the pain, the fatigue, and leaving some people so immobilised that they cannot even leave their beds. Now, this is not trivialising the symptoms or saying it is not real. The pain and fatigue are extremely real, as I know from experience. But I also know from experience that there are ways of reversing the habitual feelings of fear, which in time will reverse the symptoms of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. And although the Curable and Mave apps are about dealing with chronic pain, I strongly believe that this also helps with fatigue. For if we stop and think about how fatigue shows up in our bodies, if we just stop and listen to what's happening in our body when we feel fatigue, there is discomfort. But how else would we know we are fatigued? When I think about it, there is often some kind of headache, or at least unpleasant pressure or heaviness behind the eyes. My limbs might ache or feel heavy. And fatigue is perhaps just another way for our brains to try and stop us doing stuff. And I should reiterate this for any skeptics out there. This brain retraining has been scientifically researched and proven. It is not just an airy-fairy theory. So, what has this to do with graded exercise and whether it works or not? When graded exercise is done properly, the patient starts an exercise program, usually walking, that starts at a level they are able to do without causing symptoms, and increases the amount of exercise in very tiny increments on a weekly basis. So, for example, you might start with walking for just 2 minutes every day for a week. And as long as that has not caused any symptoms, you then increase it by a minute the following week and walk for 3 minutes. If at any time you experience symptoms, you take a break and go back to where you felt comfortable and start again, perhaps with even smaller increments, perhaps 30 seconds, for example. Well, this was how it was taught to me. And after about 3 months, I was able to walk for 20 minutes without flare-ups, where before that would have seemed impossible. So, putting this together with what I've learned about the brain and fear, what I believe is happening is that in graded exercise, done properly, you are proving to your brain that you can go a little further, that it is safe to do so. And so as you increase each daily exercise, you are teaching your brain that it is not necessary to create pain. And it's important to do this slowly because it takes a while to unlearn that fear. It's a bit like trying to get a frightened animal to come to you. It takes time and lots of food and encouragement. And the animal comes a little bit closer each time until it trusts enough to take the food from your hand. What I think has happened with some of the graded exercise therapy programs is that basically a lack of understanding of why it actually works. And people have been pushed too hard before they are ready to do so. So the fear has actually become worse rather than better, and therefore created worsening symptoms. When done properly in very small increments and alongside using an app such as Curable, I believe that graded exercise is a valuable therapy for people with CFS, and that banning that guidance was a big mistake. What is needed is more understanding about how it works with regard to retraining the brain around fear of movement. I've put links to the Curable and Mave apps below, and I would love to hear what you think. Please feel free to comment, and please like and subscribe. I have recovered from chronic fatigue syndrome to around 95% now, using the techniques and therapies I discuss in this channel. And I really want to help those of you out there who are still struggling with this. So please do hit that button for more videos. Be well, and thanks for listening.